by presenting belief itself as a work, we end up coming full circle to a point where the proof of our salvation is found in our own works. That's irony.
You're listening to Focus on the Bible, a production of Focus Evangelistic Ministries, Incorporated.
Welcome to Focus on the Bible. I'm Josiah Coyle, and we are going to get into it today because we're talking about free will. Now, this is a very hot topic for a lot of people. I always kind of thought of free will as something that's important, but not really worth debating over because I've seen so many people go back and forth about it. Basically, the argument is, can we really have free will and God also be sovereign? Because as a Christian, we believe that God is sovereign, but we define sovereignty in different ways. To some people, saying that we truly have free will means that God, in their mind, is not completely sovereign. So either God is in control of everything and we don't have free will, or God is not in control at all. My view on this is no. In order for us to have free will, that elevates God's sovereignty because he can work through us without forcing us to do things. Like whatever we choose, God is working with that. He's got foreknowledge of everything. Peter writes that God predestines according to his foreknowledge. But I never thought it was worth it to really get into that argument because it gets to be more philosophical rather than theological. Except recently, I realized something that I had never considered before. Although the topic of whether or not people have free will seems philosophical, it seems theoretical, that influences practical beliefs and actions as well. Here's the idea that I'm going to sum up the no free will view. This view holds that it is outside the natural capacity of humans as sinners to choose God. We cannot choose God. We can't believe in him. We cannot desire fellowship with him. That's just outside what we can even do. So therefore, God must give us the ability to trust him. And then in this case, we necessarily will trust him, right? Because we don't have free will of our own. It's either we can't trust him or he gives us the ability to, and by that, we do trust him because that's our new nature. This view, it presents belief itself as a work. One passage that's used to support this idea is Ephesians 2:8. Because a lot of us, if we hear, well, no, belief is work, we go, pause, Ephesians 2:8 and 9. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. Salvation is not by works, right? So that can't be true. These things are separate. But somebody who holds this view, likely, if you brought up that verse to them, would say, exactly. Look at it. Ephesians chapter 2, starting in verse 8, for by grace are you saved through faith. And that, they would say, this pronoun is the partner of the word faith here. And that faith, not of yourselves, faith is the gift of God. So God must give you the gift of faith in order for you to trust him. We've talked about this in a shorter video, which we'll link in the description, but just to sum up why this is problematic, the word faith, pistis, in Ephesians 2:8, is a feminine Greek word. It's feminine, singular. Greek pronouns must agree with their counterpart in case, number, and gender. So the word that, as in that not of yourselves, that is the Greek word tuta. It's a neuter pronoun. So it doesn't make sense that would be specifically modifying the word faith. Okay. Now the author could have used a different word. Aute also means that in Greek, and it's feminine as well. He could have just written it that way, but these don't agree. So either that is conceptually talking about everlasting life being the gift, and everlasting life is by grace through faith, or the author of Ephesians, Paul the Apostle, just doesn't know how to write Greek properly. And he spoke it and wrote it fluently. So I think that's a ridiculous argument to be making. So I would argue that those who use this position, who use Ephesians 2:8 to try to say God has to give us faith in order for us to trust him, you'd have to lack either knowledge or integrity. One of those things. Either you just don't know better, or you are willing to twist scripture in order to make it say what you want it to say, even though a grammatical and contextual reading of it does not agree with that. So another verse that people bring up is John chapter 6. John chapter 6, verse 29. Jesus is speaking and he says, "This is the work of God, that you believe on him whom he hath sent." See, belief is the work of God. So let's work through the logic of this. If that's true, and God has to change our nature in order for us to be able to accept him, then since our nature is changed, we will accept him. We must always, therefore, be at least trying to walk with God at every point, because it is our new nature to do so. Therefore, if at any point we are not fully devoted to God, it would mean that God's work is incomplete, that he hasn't given us a good enough nature. That can't be so, because God's work is not incomplete. It doesn't fail. So if we are not fully devoted to God, it means we aren't saved, nor have we ever been saved. Now, here's the irony of this position. By presenting belief as a work, now, the end that serves is basically to try to say, no, get your eyes off me even more. Even believing's too much to ask. God has to compel you to believe for you to even be able to. So don't look at me, look at God even for belief as well, okay? By presenting belief itself as a work, we end up coming full circle to a point where the proof of our salvation is found in our own works. That's irony. We're saying, no, it's not by works. Even belief is a work. But then we work our way all the way around the clock to a point where I can tell if you're saved by your works. I can tell if I'm saved by my works. Since when is my works the proof of my position in Jesus Christ? This is where we diverge, right? If you do not believe in free will, then you likely are going to reach this conclusion. And I, who do believe in free will, I who believe that our free will is a testimony of God's sovereignty, I see this differently. I refer to this as backloading the gospel, saying, no, you don't have to have works to be saved, but if you are saved, you will always have good works. The proof is never me for salvation. It's always Jesus Christ. Now, you could look at my life to look for proof of whether or not I am walking with God. Not everybody who trusts in Jesus Christ is always going to follow him, because we still have our sinful nature. We could see that in Romans chapter 7. Paul writes about his own sinful nature. He's like, verse 15, "For that which I do allow, not for what I would, that do I not, but what I hate, that do I." I know that's a tongue twister. Verse 18 says, "For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing, for to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good, I find not." Jesus, Matthew 26:41 says, "Watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." We still have our flesh nature. As Galatians talked about, our spirit and our flesh, these are contrary to one another. They want different and opposing things. And we can walk in the spirit so that we don't fulfill the lust of the flesh. None of this makes sense to me if we don't have a free will, if we only have our nature to reject God until God intervenes to compel us to accept God, and then we always accept God practically as we live our life on earth. And if we don't, if we get stuck in sin, then we never really were saved at all. We talked about that plenty. I won't go down that rabbit trail, but this is how free will fits into that. And people point to John chapter 6 to show this. Here's a second irony. Okay, hang on to your hat for this. Okay, Jesus says this is the work of God. He doesn't say the work of God is that some people believe or that certain people believe. He says this is the work of God. Look at it, that you believe. Here's the irony. These people don't believe. So did God fail in his work? Because he says his work is that you would believe. They don't believe. Verse 32, he says, verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. It's standing right in front of them. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven and giveth life unto the world. Verse 36, he says, but I said unto you that you also have seen me and believe not. So if this verse is saying that belief has to be God specifically compelling, making somebody believe, then God is failing here because it says the work of God is that they would believe. I don't know, somebody who would hold this position would probably say, okay, Josiah, then what does that verse mean? Let me use this example. Let's say I'm a well digger. I'm a missionary well digger. I go to Africa and I'm digging wells. My work is clean water. If you heard me say that, if you met a well digger and then that's what they said, would you assume from that they go around and say, drink this clean water? Drink it now. Would you assume that from them? No, because their work is providing the water. That's what they do. They provide this free thing. All you have to do is take it. That could hardly be described as a work. You're standing there watching me drill this well and I hand you a cup of water and you drink it and somebody's like, wow, you're really working hard. No, they're not working hard. They're just drinking the work that I'm doing, that I'm giving to them. And the reason I use the example of the well is because Jesus uses this example. Look with me at John chapter 4. Jesus, in verse 10, says to the woman at the well, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that said to you, give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. Now, I think it's interesting to note that the gift of God is referenced here, and the gift clearly is not faith, right? Because he says, you would have asked for it. In order for me to ask for this gift from God, I would need to desire to be in right relationship and standing before God. But I can't unless God gives that to me. So it's like, if you're going to have faith, God needs to give you the desire to have faith, and then you need to ask for faith, and then God will give you the faith, and then you can trust him, right? For all the sense that makes. He says, if you knew what I have to offer, you'd be asking me for it right now, and I would give it to you. Whose responsibility is it to take this? The woman at the well. Whose responsibility is it to take the bread that Jesus offers? The people in John 6 that he's talking to, but they won't believe him because they don't believe God. And that's what he says. That's what he repeats all the way through John chapter 6. If they believed God, then they would accept his son, Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is the one that God witnesses is his son and the only way, truth, and life. In 1 John chapter 5, starting in verse 9, it says, if we receive the witness of men, the witness of God is greater, and this is the witness that he's testified of his Son. He that hath the Son hath life, and he that hath not the Son hath not life. It's simple. The offer of everlasting life is right there for you to choose to take it or to choose to deny it. And not making a choice is denying it. Accept Jesus Christ for everlasting life. Accept the testimony that God has given us through Jesus Christ. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Focus on the Bible. If you have questions or comments, you can email us at info@ femionline.com. That's info at femionline.com. Until next time, don't forget to focus on the Bible.